All right.
Awesome.
Hey, Rob. Well, welcome back for the
Thank
second
you.
in
Thanks for
our
having me on
series.
again.
You're welcome. As I was saying before we hit the record button, the last one we did was well received, and it's something that I think that we can develop the conversation more on as time goes by. I want to be a student as much as I want to be able to teach people. Um, so I'm sure that we can learn something from our conversations. But today we agreed to try and focus a bit more on the sort of esoteric and less measurable elements of consciousness. And
Yes.
I know that in your field or in the field of science in general, it's not something that can really be grasped and
Mm.
really be measured and quantified and even philosophically, perhaps even really allowed for, because the evolution of consciousness is a difficult thing to quantify.
Mm.
Otherwise, the evolution of a being, if you like, is perhaps
Yes.
easier to imagine, or evolution of an ecosystem.
Mm.
So, from the science, just to remind people who didn't catch Rob on the last one, Rob is a graduate from Durham University. And what would your qualifications be written
Uh,
down on the?
I've just finished my master's in maths and physics at Durham.
Okay,
Um,
okay,
but I'm interested in all these kind of esoteric ideas and like bit of philosophy, bit of physics. I'm kind of these are the big questions in life kind of interest me. Um,
awesome, awesome. And what is you? I mean, in terms of the mainstream academia perspective
mm,
on consciousness, where are you, I have my own understanding of where science is on it, but
mm.
you might have a different view on that.
It's really quite a big open question still. There's still like no um, kind of overarching theory behind it. I would say like we know very little about how the brain works and how consciousness arises. Um, kind of in my mind, lots of people are kind of approaching it in different ways.
Hmm.
Um, so you have kind of like the scientific reductionist materialist approach,
Yeah,
like trying to look at like MRI scans and figuring out, which bits of the neurons are
electrical
firing.
impulse. Yeah, yeah.
And I'm not sure how far that gets you.
Hmm.
Um, it's kind of like the analogy is like, oh, if you see a game of like Pong on a computer screen, can you reconstruct a computer? It's like, well, there might be only so far you can get just by
Mm-hmm.
looking. Um, there's some interesting work going on, like from more of the AI perspective, like neurobiology AI, kind of almost trying to like recreate it in silicon. Like,
Okay.
and I think it basically, and also there's stuff from like religion, like the Buddhists and like more spiritual traditions, like of the nature
Hmm.
of consciousness. What does it mean to be a conscious being?
Being. Mm.
Um, and I think kind of all these different approaches will somehow at some point have to kind of reconcile. But I think we're a long way off. But all of these different things kind of give you a flavor of
Mm.
kind of what consciousness is.
Mm. I mean, is there an general acceptance that there is consciousness, that consciousness is not just the firing of neurons in the brain?
Yes, I think so. I think I mean, a very kind of materialistic viewpoint would be like the conscious experience is basically just a result of neurons firing in the brain, um, and kind of that's what generates
Yeah,
consciousness
yeah.
in a sense. But that's still like that would be kind of more of the modern science perspective of it. But then going back into philosophy is kind of Descartes, I think therefore I am type thing of like you get into all the, like the weeds of like, well, what can we tell is real? Like the only thing that we can really say for certain is that we are conscious beings, and how much of like kind of the external world is. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, I think for the most part, like a lot of scientists would say that we are just kind of material brains, and the
Yeah.
activation of neurons in the brain produces this conscious feeling.
Un
And
unconnected,
I'm not
unconnected.
even personally sure. I think there might be some more stuff going on.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, I think that's quite a almost an easy explanation.
yeah.
Although it might not encapsulate the full experience of consciousness.
I feel like there was back in the 50s, maybe 40s, before the World War, the Second World War, and maybe even into the 50s, there was quite a lot of work being done on exploring the consciousness through psychedelic
Mm,
research. And I think and the the gap between, or the space between, the material experience and something higher was never really made clear to me until I had, that kind of psychedelic uh,
mm,
breakthrough. And then I was able to see beyond the fractal that, wow, there's something that we're connected to that's
mm,
beyond me.
mm,
Um, and of course, people who've had near death experiences have come back and spoken about connecting to something higher.
mm,
People who've lost loved ones have spoken about them reconnecting with them in some way. And of course,
mm,
science can reduce that to, you know, um, ghost memories or things that have been held from experiences, or a desire to connect with a loved one. So I was myself, quite happy to reduce those experiences away,
mm,
preferring the idea that there was no connection between myself and everything else that's out here.
mm,
And that was, so that my 2015 experience with the DMT was really the breakthrough, even though I'd done some psychedelics mostly for fun when I was younger.
mm,
But um, it really showed me something that science, in all of my consideration and research of trying to understand who and what we
mm,
are, had never really given me that
mm,
clarity. And if there was insights on that, it was generally shrouded in the general consensus is that this is not what we're seeing.
mm,
It is, as you suggest, that the mainstream idea of it being a separate, individual, unique
mm,
development of consciousness within the individual avatar. And
mm,
yeah, so it's good to kind of get a grounding of where the mainstream is. I do feel like if we if we have a supra consciousness above ourselves, then it speaks beyond evolution.
mm.
Do you feel like that there's an argument for an evolution of a group consciousness, or a shared, or a higher consciousness? I don't know if that
For
would fit.
sure, for sure,
Yeah.
definitely. Like the kind of like the uh, some of the psychoanalysis, like the Jungian ideas of kind of like the collective consciousness, kind of things that kind of almost exist when the consciousness of many people kind of come together. There's
Yeah.
almost like an elevated thing
Mm,
that people can kind of
mm,
not even consciously tap into, but kind of something that's like almost like informing their subconscious way of like um, kind of existing and being.
yeah.
Um,
Mainstream, is that a pretty mainstream kind of thinking? Or so I can imagine some hard-nosed scientists, sitting in their science lab going, no, they've got their little petri dish. Life is coming, life is coming. There can be
yeah,
none of that.
yeah. Well, there's definitely it's all kind of to do with kind of emergent complexity kind of theories of kind of like
Mm,
even if you know what like kind of the scientific method and the reductionist method is that's just keep zooming in and zooming in and zooming in. Let's study the most fundamental things we can study.
mm,
Um, and then if we figure out those, then everything else will follow. Um, but that's not really the case. And I think kind of science has kind of started to realize that that's you can't just infinitely like keep zooming in, and just because you know all the rules
mm,
doesn't mean that you know how the game is going to play out.
mm.
So you can know exactly how everything's going to model and everything's going to interact. So, for instance, say if I look at, you know, study an individual ant, like, you know, I pluck an ant out of a colony and see what it kind of does. It kind of moves around. You wouldn't say it would be able to do much,
Mm.
but kind of the collection of all these ants can form these like complex structures. They have a, you know, a set of ordered hierarchy, and they like, you know, there's, even if you could tell exactly what this ant was going to do, there's no way of knowing without just kind of letting it be, letting it run out, what kind of the emergent things
Yeah,
are.
yeah,
So I think even like, you know, even if we know how like a neuron activates and how these collections of neurons activate, it's kind of like when we just kind of got to let it run, and like the emergent complexity from that is more than what we can say just by studying it, you know,
mm,
individually.
mm,
But yeah, I'm not sure about the kind of the mainstream consensus on the kind of collective um, unconscious side, but I think there's definitely group dynamics that I think
yeah,
most scientists would agree that when you have like individual agents with some set of basic rules. I'm not saying
mm,
humans are basic, but like even simple agents, not, you know, how I say humans are quite complex agents, but even under those circumstances, like kind of the emergent thing is more complicated than the individual. It's like the sum is greater than the parts.
the hive mind. And
Mm,
yeah, I mean, you know, the hive mind, um, and obviously you see it in an ant colony where they just seemingly know what to do and they go
mm,
about their business, you know. And I guess in a way, if you were looking in from a far off place on the earth and seeing a city going about its business at 4 in the morning, the refuse collection guys are coming out, and for some reason they just put on these bright uniforms and they run around in a truck for 5 hours, and
yeah.
they go and dump it somewhere. And if you were this giant looking down, you go, "Wow, how did it know to do that?" And you know, and I pluck that truck or that driver out, and
Mm,
then tomorrow a new driver replaces him, and
mm,
you know, and so you know there is and the hive mind actually is fine for Darwinism, really, because you know
mm,
we can work as a hive, we demonstrate that, and perhaps you know the whole point of the Darwin agenda is to have us in that kind of, we are a hive and we should work towards what the queen wants us to do,
mm,
kind of thing, you know. And I don't have a problem with a little ant kind of group, you know, having their own colony. And the same with true with people, you know, if people want to get together and do something, you know, collectively, that sort of makes sense. You know,
mm,
if you're on an island with 100 people, working together is the way to survive that
mm,
experience. Um, and the hive, that you know, interestingly, the hive is probably a lot better at the ants are probably a lot better at going about their business and working
mm,
towards the betterment of the
mm,
hive, where perhaps
mm.
we're not as compliant as that. And
And it's interesting to see that like the ant doesn't really know what it's doing.
yeah,
It's kind of the ant has all these like kind of external factors, but
yeah.
yet it doesn't. It's not. It's almost like not consciously making these decisions out of its own kind of validity. It's just kind of.
I know, and I love the analogy with where mankind is, you know, because we are subservient, compliant.
Mm,
You know, there's a whole lot of obedient, you know,
mm,
and so um, and I'm not for people running around mob rule. I do like you know order. You know, I
mm,
don't feel like what what I'm wanting, as opposed to living on an ant farm, is just complete chaos. No, I don't think that at all. I feel like we should be, you know, working towards a common goal and
mm,
so on. But that should be like our local common goal for our local ant heap, not for, you know, some
mm,
ant heap all the way over in Buckingham Palace or the Vatican City,
mm.
uh, you know, who are pulling the strings of my ant heap, and every day agents of that ant from the Vatican City turn up and take some of the ants away, or some of the from some of the produce from my mountain.
Yeah.
Um, you know, that's where I think we're being. It feels to me like we're being. um, the system is wanting to create those obedient,
Mm,
um, subservient types who will then empower the you know
mm.
the hive.
And
Um,
I know
Yeah.
this is a little bit tangential, um, but for instance, do you think that the for instance the like kind of the or the queen bee or like the lead ant. I'm not.
Mm.
I'm ignorant here about how exactly an ant colony works, but I'm assuming there's some.
Ignorant,
Yeah,
ignorant. Yeah,
yeah. Um,
so
but
many ant words.
like I'm not sure if kind of it's almost like the system itself. Like there's no. It's almost like an emergent thing. For instance, in the ant colony, there's no one ant that has it all premeditated and is saying, "Ah, no, we need this amount of ants to go and collect these leaves from somewhere."
Yeah.
I think it's kind of more of a like even the so-called leaders, like
Mm.
the chieftain ants, like don't really know. They're just acting according to almost like the structure that's
Yeah.
kind of
The
beneath them.
beehive. The beehive
Yeah.
comes to mind, and the secret societies loves the bee. There's a lot of symbolism in the bee,
Mm.
and the queen bee and the queen of hearts, in the what's it, down the rabbit hole, um,
Alice in Wonderland.
Alice in Wonderland. And the queen bee, and of course you're born into a certain class in the bee family, and you will go out and be a worker bee or a soldier bee
Mm.
or a nurturer bee, and that's what you will be. And there isn't really a lot of freedom to be
Mm.
what you want to be in that
Mm.
situation. I think there's probably been sort of Disney Pixar movies made about these little colonies of ants or bees or whatever, and then there's one who really wants to go out and adventure, like that Harry, not Harry Potter, the other one, Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit
Yeah.
that wants to go
Yeah.
and adventure for. And I think that's what that's what this system wants to squeeze out of us, is that
Mm.
will to go out and be an adventurer, rather work towards the good of the hive. And again, if the hive was your local village, your local community, and those around you, then yeah, fair play, put something in towards your community for sure.
Mm.
But when it's done where there's these overbees who are coming in and kind of
Mm.
dominating your own queen or your own
Mm.
hive, then that's when that sort of analogy or that way of aligning ourselves with nature might have been exploited.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. What are your kind of thoughts of kind of like the collective conscious? Do you think there's like a overarching thing between humans? Is that what's the
Yeah, certain of that there is like I put it like this, that those old Dodgem cars we used to have in the 70s, 80s, maybe 90s. You've seen
mm.
them at the fun fair where they've got a little Dodgem car and it's got a metal bar touching
Mm.
an electrified roof.
Yeah.
I believe that we're all that we all have. Maybe it's through the pineal gland, maybe just the nature of you being an electromagnetic egg within
Mm.
an electromagnetic system, that you're always in contact with it.
Mm.
Um, it's the suggestions that knowing that is the case, then there might be ways to reduce your individual connection to the system by insulating it,
Mm.
insulating you from it. Wearing rubber shoes, never going barefoot on the ground, never getting in the sunlight.
Mm.
You're not reconnecting with the electrical system.
Mm.
So whether it be through the feet or, as some people say, through this pineal gland in your brain, which is calcified, particularly by fluoride in the water.
Mm.
So, I'm only talking about stuff that I've seen through, the conspiracy, research that I've done. I can't, I know that there is a pineal gland for sure in the
Mm.
center of your brain. I asked a doctor once who was doing a scan on my unborn child. And they got this super modern scanning thing. This is back in 2016, 17, and the doctor was gobsmacked for a second that I was even asking him about a pineal gland. But there is such a thing, and it's a pine cone shaped gland the
Yeah.
size of a pea or smaller than a pea.
Mm.
And I've seen images of them being calcified.
Mm.
And the story is that this calcification comes from fluoridation of water,
Mm.
and that a certain Adolf in Germany, he calcified, he fluoridated his water to
Mm.
make the POWs more docile.
Mm.
Um, so so I think just the evidence that I have that we've not been encouraged to connect to the system, and that as people are becoming less and less natural and more um, propped up by pharma and chemicals and non-natural people who will maybe almost never go outside,
Mm.
then those people for me feel like they are being moved and are further away from a natural or a proper connection to the system.
Mm.
Does that mean that your level of consciousness is lower, or your access to the higher consciousness is less? Maybe your consciousness is not lower. Maybe you're never a low consciousness being. It's just that your receptors, your ability to tap into that has been dulled out, has been
Mm.
diminished. Um, so someone who works on the land, someone who lives, in nature,
Mm.
working with animals, for example, or with trees and so on, they're far better placed, I would say, to be in a more natural state with the system.
Mm.
And what we see with the way that the world is being squeezed into tiny little shoebox houses, 15 minutes from everything that they need,
Mhm.
um, and with VR headset on, earphones.
Mm.
I saw it during the lockdowns. People were basically with the glasses on, headphones on, mouth covered. It's like
Mm.
gloves, some of them. It's like you're giving away your natural
Yeah.
connection to the system. Exactly how
Mm.
we're connected to it is obviously, as I say, up for debate. But the more you insulate yourself from the system, the less likely you are to be connecting to it
Mm.
in the proper way. So, yeah, I think we're all connected to it. I did want to say that there is on the table the possibility that there's more than one consciousness, um, or that there is the possibility that there are entities that are connected to a lower consciousness or a darker consciousness.
Mm.
In a yin yang kind of conversation, and everything is love and hate, or light and
Mm.
dark, and or love and fear. And so there does seem to be people who prefer to operate from that fear paradigm.
Mm.
And it's possible that there is even intentional fear mongering, fear inducing actions driven by such entities who get off on that, who actually
Mhm.
feed on that, who feed on your fear. There was a movie called Monsters Inc. You may
Yeah.
have come across it.
Yeah.
You're young enough to have watched that, I suspect. But I know from basics of it is that they're saying this is, we can actually charge ourselves based on the
Mm.
siphoning of fear or energy.
Mm.
In the very materialist sense, we talk about that as being the energy that I would get from taxing you, from making
Mm.
things very expensive for you, so that you have to give your hours of your life for that.
Mm.
But I even go further and suggest that even like a football stadium could be designed as an energy harvesting device, so that when 50,000 fans are baying and screaming and happy and sad,
Mm.
that energy too could be harvested in electro, because we are powerful energy devices.
Mm.
And if I can get your energy pulsing in a particular way, maybe I can exploit that. Yeah.
Mm.
But yeah, so I do allow for the possibility, Rob, that there is a dark force and a light
Mm.
force. And there's so much of that ideation in Hollywood movies, with
Yeah.
the dark versus the light,
Yeah.
good versus the evil, if you like.
Mm.
And of course, religions are replete with that
Mm.
kind of iconography.
Mm.
So that's how I see consciousness or our connection to it. And by the way, I should add just that, for me with the DMT in 2015, one of the overpowering knowledges that came to me through that experience was that I'm connected to everything, and everything is
Mm.
connected to me.
Mm.
So that's what I think
Yeah,
on that.
and where let me think. What's that like is that kind of overarching consciousness, would that be kind of like a deity, like a god, or what? How would that kind of?
Yeah, the deity, the man with the white beard sitting on a cloud
Mm.
idea doesn't really resonate too strongly with me.
Mhm.
Even offering a gender like he, often
Mm.
people talk in terms of a he. Um, I don't think that sits with me either. I think that creation requires he and she, male and
Mm.
female, light and dark. In order to create the Trinity, the child needs
Mm.
mother and father. And we talk about Mother Earth,
Mhm.
and so for me, not a gender, um, just an all-encompassing love,
Mm.
um, without necessarily there being a gender. I'm just thinking about this low tone throughout my DMT experience, the 7 minutes or so. It was just like this hum, like this universal vibration that is the sort
Mm.
of what I've described at the time as the bass vibration, of which
Mm.
everything is a tone up or down to create
Mm.
the material that we see around us. Um, but yeah, so the interesting thing about what if there's a consciousness, what is it, um, and how all encompassing is it? Because if we're inside of a universal electromagnetic egg or apple,
Mm.
is the consciousness everything inside of that apple, or is the consciousness everything inside of the apple and everything beyond the apple, what we might call the vacuum of space?
Mm.
You know, and yeah, yeah. And by the way, for me, there isn't when I talk about the universal egg or the apple, I should clarify. I mean, all the stars that we can see, everything that WMAP shows, the background
Mhm.
radiation, all of that is our known universe. Outside of that, it's up for grabs. But and so same is true with the consciousness. Is it is it all of that plus everything beyond that
Mm.
somehow, or is it just everything that's contained within this one egg that we happen to be this egg that we happen to
Mm.
be in? I don't have an answer on that, and I'm quite comfortable that I'm not maybe meant to know, but
Mm.
that as I said to before, is that like if I set you a challenge to make your way through a series of mazes in the dark, and that was the challenge. But then I gave you a map and a torch. It'd be like, well, I didn't, a map showing you exactly
Yeah.
when to make the turns and so on. It would be like, well, I've not set you any challenge at all.
Mm.
So you can't know. You
Yeah.
can't know that you are, or there is this expression
Mm.
that is all or whatever it is. But it's for me, obviously, having had the insight from DMT,
Mm.
it was that my higher self that I encountered was connected to something beyond that, something
Mm.
much more magnificent. Even though my higher self was seemed an infinite being of infinite power that could not be injured or harmed by anything here on the earth, um, it was still only a part of something much more magnificent,
Mm.
something much more all encompassing. Everything, as far as the best I would say it is there, everything that is within the consciousness.
Mm.
But we are maybe not here to know that, because I think one of the things with our why science, as Tesla said, has gotten carried away with the mathematics and stuff like that and building models that bear no
Mm.
relation to reality is because we desperately need to know. We have such a desire to answer the questions, and
Mm.
I may have said to you last time, I was really eager for them to find life on Mars and Moon, and even
Mm.
a little worm or something that had once lived on the Moon would have been like cause for celebration,
Yeah.
because you want to have answers to these deep
Mm.
questions. And for me, I'm comfortable at I know that there's something higher, um, and it seems to me anyway, my experience was of a totally loving essence, a love that was higher than any love I'd ever
Mm.
experienced or heard of or imagined.
Mm.
And it was all good. Whatever was on the other side of my experience was all good. Um, and so that's why a lot of my research and what I talk about in the streets is to focus on what I think I understand that we are, is that we
Mm.
are an expression of this higher this highest order, this highest self.
Mm.
Even though you couldn't, as I said many times, I didn't consider that my higher self was God, but it was like a vessel of God.
Mm.
And in the same way, I am not God, or we are not God, but we are a
Mm.
vessel of your higher
Mm.
self, and therefore
Mm.
God, whatever
Mm.
whatever that is. Um, but certainly the idea is religion. Some religions push that it's like this angry dude, waiting to kind of punish you and so on.
Mm.
I don't have that sense of it at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. Yeah. So from kind of what you're saying, it's like there's some kind of similar notions to like what the Hindus and the Buddhists
Mm.
would kind of think of, kind of we are instantiations of this greater kind of
Yeah.
consciousness. Yeah. Um, yeah,
Well,
it's
I
really
think
interesting.
that actually even Christ was trying to say that.
Mm.
I think that Christ was trying to say that you are the way, the truth, and the life. And
Mm.
don't get to God but through you. He says, but
Mm.
through me. I think that he's meaning for us to repeat those words,
Mm.
and it's through yourself that you find
Mm.
um, any of access to this higher self of yourself, because it's not
Mm.
myself. It is each of us.
Mm.
Um, so I kind of tongue in cheek, say that the word Christian maybe was misspelled. It should have an M at the end, not an N. Christian would be Christ I am.
Mm.
And so I think that some people claim this is like a new age um, way and of thinking, and I don't really know. I don't follow like
Mm.
gurus and people like that. This is really just my having listened to teachers and listened to people's information and taken my own experience, and and I've established what I think to be
Mm.
a plausible a way of it, and I often describe it as the Matrushka, the Russian nested dolls, there being
Mm.
the seven, and then us being one of the small ones or the smallest one
Mm.
at the center, and then everything magnifies out. As it magnifies out, it loses materialism. So there is for being so small and being so material and dense and having the ability to taste and all of that sort of stuff.
Mm.
There's a sort of price to be paid in terms of your stature. But
Mm.
as you go back up in fractal form towards the most high, or the number seven
Mm.
doll, then you lose that materialism, and you
Mm.
lose all the nuance. You just become one amorphous totality of all of this experience.
Mm.
And I think that, as I say to people in the street, I think that you were set here to come and have an experience on behalf of your higher self and
Mm.
ultimately of the creator.
Mm.
And maybe it well be some divine engineering to create the situations that we're going through in the world today, and maybe even in previous incarnations.
Mm.
That would seem to me to be the most logical conclusion
Mm.
when it comes to understanding this.
Do you think, out of interest, that there's like a distinction between the like external world and the internal world? Because I know a lot of philosophers would say that like the internal world is all that is, and we kind of almost like make the world by looking. Or
Mm.
do you kind of believe that there is a world out there um, already, and we just happen to be kind of placed in and experience this world? I know we're getting quite
No,
philosophical
I
questions,
like
but
it. No, it's fine. I mean, I think both of those are plausible. That
mm,
there is a background medium within which is emanating all of this frequency that we see as landscape.
mm,
Um, and it's a sort of permanent feature of this electromagnetic system. And then
mm,
almost like we're dropped in for an experience of that.
mm,
But I'm also drawn to the idea that a lot of it is simply what is your projection, and then you're projecting it from within, particularly when it comes to the lights in the sky. Um,
mm,
I feel like I feel very strongly that these are somehow centering themselves on me and each of us individually. And so we're all getting this sort of star trail turning kind of experience of the lights in the
mm,
sky. But our perspective on it, whether it's right above us or out down there, will depend on how close we are to the north part of the Earth or under the equator, or in the south part of the Earth will
mm,
determine will determine that. But that you are encoding this yourself. Yeah, no, I think if I had to sort of settle on one, I would say it's that there is a game board here,
mhm,
and when you travel over it, you you interpret the data, and it becomes a tree
mm.
and a mountain and so on. Um,
Yeah,
but
I think
it's
there's a few
yeah.
scientists that would kind of agree with that statement. There's kind of we are almost the interpreters of what's out there, the fact that like a trivial example would be like we can only see a certain portion of the electromagnetic spectrum. Like,
Mm,
of course, we must have to pass the universe somehow. We don't see everything with our senses.
mm,
Are you familiar with the work of Donald Hoffman at all? Is that
no. Mm,
so? Um, he's a big proponent of kind of, or it's almost like consciousness is all that there is. Um, and he would say that if you take um, the Darwin's theory of evolution
mm,
seriously,
mm,
which I'm not sure of your thoughts, but um, he's like he's done like kind of computer simulations to say that it's not the beings who see reality as it is that survive. It's the beings that see reality to suit their specific needs such that they reproduce.
right,
So he's saying that like in kind of these game simulations, it's kind of the creatures that the 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 thing to survive isn't necessarily to see the actual world. It's to see kind of just enough.
right.
Um, like to I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but almost like that rustling in the trees is a lion. It's not like we need to see the lion. It's just like
Yeah.
for like a monkey or something. It's like
Mm,
that's all that there needs to be
mm,
for you to survive. So you're not necessarily seeing what's truly there,
yes.
but you're seeing what's there, what's good enough for you to kind of reproduce to the next generation. Which I find so interesting that like what we see might not what we see might not be true in a sense. It might not be like what truly the universe is. It's
Mm-hmm.
just what we need to see in
Mm-hmm.
order to kind of live.
Yes. Well, it's how
So
you carry on.
that's kind of like even such like he's kind of takes it to like kind of the ends of like even such things of like space and time or like space time, like the true universe might be like we might project space
Hmm.
and time, like the true. the true
Mhm.
universe might be something like grander, but the fact that we're kind of projected into it, we get all of this kind of phenomena that we
Yeah,
see.
yeah,
I was wondering kind of what your
yeah.
thoughts.
Well, would that be like, a bit like what I was saying, that we are encoding data and then we're seeing it as a tree. We recognize it as a tree. So when I was on the DMT for 5, 6, 7 minutes, I could not see. My eyes were wide open. My brain was working at super speed, and everything that was in the space around me was no longer material. It was just
Mm,
light. Nothing. It wasn't wonking out or doing weird kind of stuff. It was just that the bricks of the wall were no longer bricks. As much as I was like wanting my eyes to return them just so I could see them as bricks again, I could not see them as bricks.
mm,
They were only light. The trees, the plants were just pulsing, and I could tell, generally the shape of the tree was still, if it was
mm,
like a cactus or something like that, I could still see the general shape of it, but it was just this more blurry light show, not
mm,
hard, not defined. I felt almost as though I could push my hand through my leg. I tried that.
mm,
I was like, wow, am I am I able to move my hand through
mm,
my leg? Because I thought I could see myself only as light.
mm,
So your brain is encoding, it seems to me, data or light or frequency, and we are programmed to see it as glass or
yeah,
tree or
mm,
whatever. There are beings, it seems to me, because as you agree that you're only seeing a tiny spectrum of the frequency system, there are things that are at a different frequency, just like an
mm,
X-ray or some, some gamma rays or whatever. There's other rays, there's other energy we know for sure can travel through a wall.
yeah,
And so, if that be true, there might be entities who
mm,
are at different frequencies who could walk through the wall through your body and you not even know that, or you might feel a little bit of a shivers. Some
yeah,
people who've had experiences with
mm,
ghosts and that kind of thing, they might be onto something some of the time, that they're definitely seeing entities and they're seemingly just vaporizing through a wall. But it may be just that for a brief moment of time, they're either able to slow their vibration down such that they're visible to you, or your senses are heightened in the
mm,
way a little bit like mine were on the DMT, where I was now able to see everything not as material but as a frequency, a vibration,
mm,
which I then, as it faded and things started returning through the fractal phase back to eventually being solid things that
mm,
look as we recognize them. So
mm,
so that feels to me very much. I mean, and I have also given thought, though I don't like the idea as much, that everything is happening from the singularity that they call the Big Bang. Everything is happening from a 0 point, and we're basically walking over 1,000 miles on what we believe to be 1,000 miles of landscape, but is actually all happening within a 0 point, and
mm,
there's actually no movement at all. It's just all it's all an imagined sort of dream that
mm,
feels real for us. So I've got
mm,
to, yeah, I've got to leave that on the table
mm,
because it's supernatural, Rob. Whatever, you know, we this is what materialism does for us, is that it takes away the supernatural, the
mm,
incredible. Even religion, it does for me a bit. And I know a lot of people I know that are in religion are quite happy with Darwinism and evolution. And for me, well, Darwin is evolution and the Big Bang evolution.
mm,
But for me, um, uh, that kind of chaos and that disorder, and allowing simply for there to be a passage of time, if that's
mm,
real, in order to create that. I don't think so. I think much more like a programmer doesn't just hit this keyboard, a million times in succession and hope he's going to have written a program. He's
yeah,
going to
yeah,
set out every part of that and
yeah,
redesign it possibly over iterations.
mm,
Um, and so for me, there is that it opens the idea that this place, this realm that we inhabit, however it's
mm,
fabricated, was done with the intention of creating a habitat
mm,
I sometimes use the example of Minecraft, and you'll know the game, I'm sure. And it's a it's an interesting kind of analogy because in a way you're dropped into this world. There's all this sort of material, trees,
mm,
ores and whatnot, and you can take some land, build a house, go
mm,
fish, keep some cattle, and so on. And I think that's possibly what the game was originally intended
mm,
to be. But some guys did a little clash of clans on us and, put walls around everything and said, yes,
mm,
you've been born into this clan. And
mm,
now you must defend the clan and work for the clan and be a good bee
mm,
in the ant colony. And
mm,
and so it's, I don't say that that's such a bad thing. It's just that's the way the colony has
mm,
been expressing itself over the last few centuries, at least,
mm.
possibly millennia, depending on what version of history.
Yeah.
True. Um, so, but I guess like anything else, if we have if we have forgiven or given up our sovereignty and our own um, autonomy in favor of the zeitgeist type, um, you know, what do they call it? Stepford wives, perfect society where,
Mm,
everybody's paying their taxes and no one commits any kind of crime. Everybody's been
mm,
sterilized down. And they're having 1.5 children. If that's what we want, then, we're doing a good job of going in that direction.
mm,
How does that affect the consciousness? I don't know. I don't know whether it's like, oh, it's bad for the consciousness that, humankind
mm,
has lost its way and is
mm,
at war with itself and all that sort of thing. That, is it merely because we think in terms of human lifetimes and 100 years is a long time? Is it merely a millennia or eons long kind of
mm,
journey or adventure for the higher self, for the
mm.
consciousness to get to a point of, I don't know, self-realization, maps.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm interested to hear your thoughts on kind of like is this a human phenomena? Like kind of where would you put like animals um kind of in this? Because I think the more scientific reductionist would say that kind of these animals also like cats and dogs and whales and dolphins have some amount of consciousness, but it's almost just kind of like on a spectrum from kind of like microbes having basically zero, and
mm,
you might get some sort of like worm, some birds, and then you kind of like get like pets. We would say is kind of quite conscious. I especially know like looking at like a friendly dog or a friendly cat, it feels like there's something
mm,
there.
yeah,
It doesn't feel like they're just like machines. There feels like there's
yeah,
something living inside
yeah,
them.
yeah.
But then almost kind of like kind of the pinnacle would be humans. Kind of how would that fit into?
Well, I think like this, that the consciousness is in everything, but so the consciousness, whatever God, to use the word God, is all. And Muslims say Allah, which means the same thing, all really.
Mm,
And and so that means that the consciousness or God is the lettuce leaf. It's also the ant and it's also the frog. But it creates itself in that way in order to be a part of its own inner environment, its own environment. In the same way as within your stomach, you have a microbiome that is a forest
mm,
full of millions of different little characters all going around doing their daily business. And they've all been created there with a purpose for a reason.
mm,
So, do I feel like the cows, like the Hindus believe, are carrying some kind of consciousness and
mm,
they should be revered and so on. I, I don't put them. Um, yeah, I don't really want to put any animal ahead of any other animal. I feel more like that like if I was creating an environment for myself to come and have the Minecraft experience, then I would have beasts of burden, animals that were for food and animals that were cleaners of, I mean, even a whale has,
mm,
little fish that swim along cleaning barnacles, and
mm,
everything seems to has been designed with a sort of an ecosystem, evolution or self, um, entropy, like it's just cleaning and recycling and so on. And so I definitely, unlike the evolutionist, the Darwinist, I should say, which I was, I don't believe that, and the vegans too, of course,
mm,
they will, and perhaps the vegetarians. I don't believe that these are carrying consciousness in the way that we are meant to rise. So some people would suggest that if you don't do a good job of this lifetime, you might come back as an ant. I don't
mm,
mean a serve ant. I mean a real little ant, or a or an animal, a pig, or something like that.
mm,
You're going to come back in some other way.
mm,
I mean, if God is everything, then God is experiencing me being um, cruel
mm,
to an animal or to a person or to a tree. You can go out and just bash on a tree and score its bark and damage the tree just for
mm,
the hell of it. You can do
mm,
that, and I'm aware that if God is everything and I'm being profligate in that way, then I am being disrespectful of
mm,
the Creator. Um, but we have a love affair with animals like the dog, the cat, the horse, and these sorts of things. So we do have an emotional um, connection to them as food, or rather, not using them as
mm.
food. Um, so so no, I think we're meant to be the good shepherd,
Yes. Yeah.
and the good shepherd knows how to take care of the goats and the sheep in their own
Mm,
unique way.
mm,
And he needs to shear them in the summertime, when the spring or whatever, and he needs to care for them and help them perhaps with their young, make
mm,
sure that they've got things that they need and so on. And I see that as our responsibility as stewards of the biome, of the micro, of the Minecraft world, is that
mm,
we can spoil it. We can try and spoil it. It'll respawn. It'll do whatever it needs to do. That it'll be fine.
mm,
But I think we're called to be stewards of it. So not to be wasteful of it. Use the animals for the things that they were designed for. Because
mm,
I don't have a Darwinist evolutionist view of the world, I don't believe that um, the animals that we see today, the chickens and the sheep, cows, and so on, these were not some clever sort of husbandry of wild animals. I think that they are intended to be animals of
mm,
the farm, who need good farmers to take care of them, and who provide us with energy. Because
mm,
again, if we are, I haven't said this today, I don't think, but if we are the micro of the macro, then whatever we see in the universe out there is within you
mm,
in a fractal form. But all of the different tones, all of the different metals, all of the different fluids and so on are just vibrations, and those vibrations are mimicked in the earth and in the atmosphere around us.
mm,
Um, and so when I was thinking about, diet, is it right for me to be eating something that is of God and so on? Well, I am
mm,
of God and I'm eating of something that is also of God, but it's about, I see ourselves as a combination of all these frequencies that you find in the universe. So
mm,
we are omnivorous because we are meant to take from the vibrations in the right amounts, but we're meant to take from the vibrations in the world around us. And so that does mean matching those vibrations. And even mainstream science will say, for example, with meat, that there are certain um, proteins, or there's certain enzymes, I think, that you
mm,
can only get through, eating meat. They call it enzymes, but it's really just another frequency, another vibration.
mm,
And so I'm quite, yeah, I'm quite comfortable with with honoring what it is. And
Mm.
that's why, being thankful for the things that you eat, whether it be plant or meat.
Mm.
Um, and but of course, in the world today, a lot of the food that we get in the supermarket hasn't been treated well.
Mm.
And therefore the vibration of it is altered, and that altered
Mm.
vibration can do the individual harm over time.
Mm.
So that's my
Yeah, no, I would basically agree with all of that. That's good. What about kind of artificial kind of life? I know recently kind of AI ChatGPT has kind of been in the news a lot.
yeah.
Like, do you think that this kind of consciousness can be tapped in like through silicon? Is there fundamentally like a biological constraint
Hack
as to what this is?
a way of hacking it, the consciousness.
Is there a way to like basically what I'm trying to get at is can a machine be conscious?
Well, when I took the DMT, I had this sense. Remember, I went in as an atheist, by the way, so I was
Mm.
really not expecting to come out having had the experience I had. But one of the clear experiences I got from it was that I could see libraries of information of human story stretching back as far as the eye could see, like
Mm.
infinitely, almost like I describe it as like the cloud. We store vast amounts of information on the cloud now. And so is it possible that what AI is trying, or what the game is trying to do, is to mimic that, is to
Mm.
create, because the way I see it is that every breath, every action that I speak, do, whatever, is being recorded. I know we're
Mm.
fascinated by recording everything on Zoom and all of this, but everything that we are doing is being recorded anyway. And it's
Mm.
not, oh, well, because you're being spied on kind of thing. It just is the way that this thing is that you are
Mm.
you are taking imprints, everything that you do, and that imprint is being stored in a higher cloud. So is the
Mm.
AI looking to, and of course the system knows that. I mean, what I went through is like, wow, if I've discovered this now, this has been known about for a long time. And the
Mm.
DMT research was, that they were doing in the 90s was shut down, and
Yeah.
you can't get funding on it, and blah blah blah. So they've known for a long time that there is this higher cloud, this higher thing that exists, and
Mm.
I think that that's what they're trying to mimic. And therefore, if I have a billion just a billion Facebook users, and I know
Mm.
what they've done for the last 10 years. I've
Mm.
seen them exchange love, hate, all these sorts of things, information, and so on. Is it possible to have an algorithm that's able to read all of that stuff and play it
Mm.
back to me like it's some higher? Yeah, yeah, I think that's what's happening with that. Um, is it sentient? I don't know if you were asking me that. Do I think that it's
Mm.
that is able to think outside of the preset programs, even though you might be able to run branches of programming that maybe make it seem like it's thinking for itself? Is it sentient? I don't think so yet. I think
That's an interesting yet.
yes. Well, well, because I think there's a key part missing for it, Rob, and that is that the human is an incredible machine that has not been we cannot, even if you go to Boston Dynamics, the world leading robot
Mm.
maker, and you go and look at what they can do, they're still really, I know there is this video of that one character that seems to be running and doing somersaults and all sorts of stuff,
Mm.
but I'm not convinced that that's not a CGI man in a suit. But the thing that's they're most popular for, they've got this robot dog, and it can go
Yeah.
running quite fast and all of that kind of
Mm.
thing. And it's like that's still very basic by comparison
Yeah.
to what we
Yeah.
can do. And someone doing a triple somersault and all these sorts of things, the agility, just on the agility side, a
Mm.
man climbing a rock and what have you. Well, so so if I was like this evil genius and I wanted to kind of dominate mankind, then I would go, gosh, there's nothing better than the man. So what if I could get the man to wear my software?
Mm.
Then I would have then I'd have both the capability of my processing power and my ability to think of answers super quickly and what have you, with his physical
Mm,
attributes that I cannot seem to mimic. Obviously, they can build a machine that's harder than a man, but in terms
mm,
of our physical attributes and our ability to, um, you know, like if McDonald's could have replaced people at the serving desk, they would have done that by now. I'm not
mm,
saying it's not possible to have a machine that sort of dunks the chips in and then takes it out after 2 minutes and then
mm,
moves it over there. I know you can build that kind of a
mm,
machine, but really, having five people run that McDonald's and and they what they do is they put a little headset on them now, so they know exactly where they are. They can tell them what to do, when to do it. Beep, there's a new drive-through come
yeah.
through. This is what you have to put down here, and you don't have to think. You just you do the robot part, and that's
It's
what
super interesting. Oh, sorry.
carry on.
It's super interesting because like I think there was a kind of big question of like why so much of the brain is dedicated to kind of like vision and like almost like sensory
Mm,
data. Um, like the actual like thinking part is quite small
right.
in relative to the whole size of the brain, and then there's quite a big portion um, that's like basically like movement in the world, and it was kind of like quite a open question is like why is that so big? And it's basically it's like when the AI researchers and the computer scientists try to like embody a robot into a form, like even like a Roomba or something, there's like automatic hoovers. It turns out it's really difficult to kind of you know pick an object and say, oh, that's a couch, that's a chair, that's a jug. Like like the embodiment is a really really difficult
Mm,
problem to
mm,
solve, and that kind of like that in my head makes sense as to why that part of the brain is much larger than
yeah,
we would have expected, is because the problem is actually much
yeah.
harder than we expected.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point you make about the automatic vacuums. I've seen one or
Mm,
two of them in the last year or so, and yeah, it's really a simple robot thing
mm,
that probably they had the technology for 20, 30, 40 years ago,
mm,
but just getting it to be a sensor so that it can,
mm,
and even these things, they've got little touch pads on them so that when it bumps something, it kind of knows, oh, I need to turn
mm,
around now. It's not really that smart. And I used to watch years ago. I used to watch something in the UK on TV called Robot Wars,
mm,
and even those robots, are just pretty much little remote controls with a little car with
mm.
four-wheel drive underneath, and then a little axe arm or something like that. It's like, wow, that's the best that we can do.
Yeah.
I really don't think that we have the capability to create just the human arm and the way that the
Mm,
fingers can do it. I know that they can do little things in certain situations, and they can mount one arm, in a production line, and it can do the same thing repeatedly over and over again, better than a man can do it, perhaps, or the welding spots on a
mm.
car production line. These things are robots are well suited for.
And I think what we like with kind of the advancement of kind of robotics and AI, I think what we'll kind of see is that humans are a lot easier to trick rather than like the robots getting and the AI getting more conscious and more kind
Mm,
of human. Like I think what we'll find is that kind of people are way easier to trick than we believed. Like that, like the Boston Dynamics little robot dog,
mm,
like people can start like feeling sorry for it. If I was to like if that thing was to walk over to me and someone was just to kick it, I don't know,
yeah,
I think I would feel a bit, even though it's literally just like a
yeah,
bit of mess, and I know that there's nothing in there that's conscious. The
mm,
fact that it has kind of like a dog like form, and I think it'll be the same thing with AI, like AI acting like a
yeah,
human, like acting like a real person, even though we know that it's not conscious.
mm,
I think what we'll find is the human brain is a lot easier to trick with that. And at what point does at what point does the thing acting conscious
yeah,
become like become conscious? Like we can never really say that something that like looks and feels and acts like it is real.
yeah.
It's kind of hard to say that it's not.
Well,
It's
look, I mean, if they were to design a robot that looked just like you, the
mm,
mouth moved like you, the eyes moved like you, the intonation and so on, I would be truly, truly floored even if they did that, I would say that the consciousness that version of you, the robot version of you, is not carrying your consciousness. It could even be upload, even with a Neuralink, it could upload the memories that you've had of your whole lifetime,
Mm,
possibly, and use that as a tableau of play, palette to work from.
mm,
I would still not believe that it's tapping into the most highest
mm,
consciousness. And one of the things I looked at a year or so ago, when trying to understand where we were at with this, was that the female robot called Sophia, which you would have
yes.
come across. Now, this robot of Sophia got given a nationality in Saudi Arabia. She was in the news for a number of years, and so on. And I did a little bit of a deep dive. There's a video or two on my channel,
Mm,
looking at what's his name, Hansen, Robert. I think not Robert. It's David Hansen, and
mm,
he's the founder of Hansen Robotics and the creator of Sophia.
mm,
And he worked for Disney before he
mm,
became this robotics kind of guy. And while he was working for Disney, he patented or developed a product called Frubber. It's used for actors and actresses in the industry to put a thick latex skin on their face so that they could change a woman to look like a man.
mm,
Really, really good working skin that
mm,
had a lot of the folds and movements, and was fairly true to a real person. So
mm,
so I started looking at this Sophia more closely, and you start to discover the possibility that Sophia is really his real human wife wearing a Frubber mask.
mm,
Um, you can't find. I mean, I did a deeper dive, and I won't go into it too much here. But just to say that my conclusion would be that they faked Sophia, that the
mm,
predecessor to Sophia was actually this David Hansen himself, and they powered this character down after a period of time. But when you look at it really closely with the glasses off, you start to think, is this just a man
yeah,
speaking lines? And in the
yeah,
case of Sophia, um, uh, why, your image of Sophia, if you've seen her, will be of this robotic face with metal arms.
mm,
But you'll never really notice that in front of her chest there is this very large pronounced
mm,
breast, and which is where
mm,
I suggest they're hiding her real arms, and then
mm,
and that is all a parlor trick designed to make us believe that there is this level of technology at the system's disposal. Now, Sophia has been, I don't know if she's been mothballed, but, and you'll never see a picture of Sophia, his wife, and him
yeah,
together. And he's the designer of this. He goes around the world and did for years. He makes excuses as to why his wife isn't at a particular event and so on and so forth. But yeah, it's the same with my Elon Musk deep dive when I was like, I've never seen Elon Musk without a shirt. And I go and Google that. It's like, what? There's only one picture of Elon Musk in 40, 50 years on
mm,
the internet with
mm,
no shirt on. That doesn't
mm,
make sense. If I was as famous as him, I'm sure friends from all over my life would have posted pictures of the time we were at the beach
yeah,
together, the time we did this. And if I was a millionaire or billionaire playboy, then I definitely would have had one or two decent holidays per year where I was, where the sun was shining and
yeah,
so on. Oh, but not Elon Musk. He sleeps in his office and he never takes a day off work. So that's why there's no pictures of him. But when you
mm,
see the pictures, you go, damn, is he wearing a bodysuit over that? I did a video on that.
yeah,
But this Sophia, I think, is sort of last generation. There is a new generation of these robotic characters that you can see out there, and I think they're still doing the same thing, putting a man in a suit, but now the suit that they wear has the ability to have like they do in Hollywood. They can actually have a man in person in a body suit that's almost like a blue screen or a green screen suit, so
mm,
that they can actually layer over um, all sorts of things to make
yeah,
it look like there's a hole in the body,
yeah,
they've been shot right
yeah,
through, or that kind of thing. Well, that's what, when I look at the available footage of these new style robot beings, I believe that they've taken it to the next level.
Mm.
A sort of combination of AI, a blue screen, and a man in a suit thing.
Mm.
So it's, for me, with that conclusion, I think, wow, they must be faking it because they want people to believe, just like going to the moon and going to Mars, they want
Mm.
people to believe that we have this technology because they want people to buy into it. Now, is it because we are the creator here on this earth, and if enough of us believe a certain thing, we could actually bring it about, we could actually create that?
Mm.
Is it that they want to impress people enough that the AI or the system is so great that that's actually where you want to go? Because this evolution, this Darwinism, is
Mm.
taking us on a journey towards somewhere, and it's away from the natural order and towards this non-natural new world order, some people
Mm.
call it, in which people are much happier being jacked in to an AI system in which
Mm.
you can still be an employee, as jacked into the AI, because I believe that in the same way as they can't, okay, people say, okay, ChatGPT is writing people's letters for them and doing all of these sorts of things, but I
Mm.
still believe that there's a role that we must fulfill
Mm.
that a computer or AI system is never going to be able to do
Mm.
without an input from us, whether it be straight through the Neuralink or just simply pushing chips around at the French fries around
Mm.
at the McDonald's.
Mm. Yeah, that is interesting.
So yeah, that's what I think. That's where I think they're trying to get us to do this idea. There is this kind of weird. I heard this weird thing. A guy called Archaics. I listen to it sometimes. He was talking about, and he's quite a well-researched guy, and he tends not to talk like just talk crap. But he was reflecting on something that I haven't yet had time to research about gamers playing um in some of these AI type gaming
Mm.
situations where in one case a man in a suit and a tie, like an NPC,
Mm.
walked into his thing and said, "Hey, I need you to get a message to my family." Now this could be bullshit, but it's an interesting possibility that if
Mm.
people are having their consciousness tapped into through this experience, that their consciousness could be ripped from them at death, that
Mm.
that their consciousness gets trapped in the AI system itself, and that there
Mm.
is a way of trapping it in there. Anyway, this character walks up to this player and says, "Hey, I need you to get a message to my family." And he gives them a whole lot of information that no one could have known. And then he goes and finds this family and says, "I found this loved
Mm.
one of yours who's apparently caught up in this game." Is that true? Is it, I don't
That's
but
ridiculous.
yeah,
I, that is, yeah. Wow.
but so my father-in-law, he passed 5 years ago. He'd had chemo um and then became really unwell after a year, and was delirious in his last week, 10 days.
Mm.
And we learned some things from him during that time, because the nurse staff would say, "Wow, we thought he was dead this morning, but he's kind of come back again.
Mm.
He's able to receive guests, people and visitors, and he'll be able to talk to you and so on. But he was gone this
Mm.
morning, kind of thing, or overnight." So he was telling us a few things that at the time didn't really make sense to us. But my wife and I, when we heard this guy, okay, say that, we both looked at each other and it was like, wow, that kind of mimics what her dad was saying at the time. In his last 5, 6 days, he's like, they came and they're performing murder rituals here in this hospital, he said. And so because we were already thinking about things happening in a different frequency. So,
Mm.
are some of these institutions set up with that in knowing, and that there are energetic things that are occurring to people in these environments. And we thought about that. But more relative was that he said, and they last night they came and plugged into me. What? He said, yeah, they and of course he's, as far as the nursing staff, he's like, he's dead. He's
Yeah.
gone. And he said, they plugged into me and took my data. And it seemed to us as though that he, it had nothing to do with the hospital. It was that there was something else that had happened to him,
Mm.
that that his life sim, his experience, whatever, was being stripped from him or taken from him at that time of his passing. Just a weird kind of thing for him to say. Obviously in the mainstream, people are delusional, and they're, when they come back and talk about having, seen Jesus and all of these, that's just neurons firing in the mind, and blah 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 blah.
Mm.
But I leave these things on the table because the world we come from is far more mysterious than I
Mm.
think we can possibly imagine. Maybe frightening, maybe crazy, but um, and so what is the agenda with Elon Musk? And because for me, Elon Musk is deep state. He's been created to take us along a journey, and the Neuralink is all a part of that. He's got F all to do with that. I
Mm.
did a video on a guy. He has to read cue cards, and he doesn't know what he's necessarily saying, so he reads cue cards. And I got him. I
Mm.
say this to you last time, where he's like looking down at cue cards, pretending to be drinking, but the water doesn't even make it to his lips on one occasion because he's more interested in seeing what he's
Mm.
going to say next. Um, so no, but the agenda that he carries is one that I think is meant to take mankind to a certain point of integration or evolution into the AI. And so, how
Mm.
is that going to look? How is that going to be? Is it that, oh, well, just your lifetime experience while you're alive, you've got the Neuralink in, you're participating in the hive mind, and so on and so forth? Or is it that it holds your consciousness and that your higher self is held in the game for
Mm.
until the game ends? Um,
Mm.
all speculation, of course.
Going kind of back to like the consciousness stuff, I'd presume that you would say that there's like you have like a free will, like you have kind of control over your actions, because I think that's kind of a point of contention in modern science is like um for instance, like physics is deterministic, well, excluding kind of quantum phenomena, which kind of throws a bit of a spanner in the works, but like there's a set, it's kind of like a billiard ball table. There's set rules that govern kind of the evolution of a system.
Mm,
Um, and if you kind of know the start conditions, then you can, just play it out, and you don't really have any control over kind of what you're doing
mm,
necessarily. So like your whole life is kind of just predetermined, and you're just kind of fulfilling this kind of script, this cosmic script that you're meant
yeah.
to kind of do.
Well, I think
That's not something that I really catch on to, but
yeah, I mean, yeah, for me, it's like it does take away the sort of the free will element of this game because it does feel to me like we're meant to be in a free will. Here's the tableau, it's like using game theory again, you arrive at Minecraft or whatever, and you can decide which way you're going to take the game.
mm,
I think it's far more likely that the sort of entities that run the game within the Minecraft field itself, like I've suggested before, and people in the street, is that if people arrived at the Minecraft game 10 generations ago and they decided that they were going to pen it all off and turn it into countries and control
mm,
any new arrivals through this mechanism, um, then that's that entity is far more inclined to want to usurp free will and
mm,
control that and say there is a predestined thing. You're going to go and work at the Bank of America, and that's going to be your lot, or you're going to, you know. So, and then again, I think that if you have a higher self, then that higher self set yourself maybe a challenge or a mission,
mm,
and that mission doesn't have to look the same for everybody. There's only one Tom Cruise. Not everybody's going to take the same mission, and
mm,
it's not to say that if your mission isn't my mission, then your mission is somehow less than my mission. So I'm not. I'm not wanting to say what the mission is. I think each individual has their own journey to take, but I do feel like if if the entity that controls it, the Minecraft field, um, doesn't want me to take my own journey, or it has inserted itself into my story, and then of course I'm not going to be following my higher self's
Yeah.
intention.
Yeah.
So you do need to. I think that this is what what one might want to do, is to break from the pattern of this is what I was.
Mm.
You know, I'll never forget. I was a youngster, maybe 20 years old, and I worked on a production line in a pork pie factory down in Dorset. And I met youngsters my age on the production line. We became friends, sitting in the canteen, chatting and what have you. And I was saying to this one guy, and I had already done national service, been to the
Mm.
army, been in war and what have you. So I was, you know, I had ambitions, to do something with my life, but I was traveling in the UK, and picked up this job on a production line, and it was just a thing that I was passing through. But this youngster, I said to him, so what is your plan for your life? He said, "Oh, well, I'll probably work to get to be a red hat, here at the
Mm.
at the factory." Now we were white, we were I can't remember, we were white hats or whatever. We were like the
Mm.
juniors, or the lowest on the pecking order, and then there were red hats, and blue hats were
Mm.
about that, and then the gray hats were like management.
Yeah.
And he pointed down the table and said, "Yeah, that's my mom and dad down there, and they were
Mm.
red hats or white hat. I can't remember now, but it was like, wow, that's it. I
Yeah.
just blew my mind that this was his
Yeah.
happy place, was that he was just going to spend his whole life working
Mm.
production line, pushing pork pies. Now
Mm.
and so then, but no foul. But that's why the system has created that, where this is going to be your experience. So I'm eager always to try and encourage people to kind of go
Mm.
beyond what the program has set for you, because once you are more in a natural state of being,
Mm.
then you are more likely to find your best natural way through
Mm.
this life sim experience.
Yeah. No, it is. Because I'm still like kind of unsure about. I'm unsure of all of this. Like what? Like how can I possibly know? But like it's kind of the interesting thing of like kind of even if the kind of it is all deterministic, we should still act and still believe in the fact that we have free will, because like it's almost like the mindset of determinism, as kind of you said, is kind of very constricting as what you can do. It kind of like um like my life was predestined to do down this route, and it's you can't you shouldn't think like that. Almost it's like it's not a very like um good way to think about your life.
Particularly
And I
when you're
still think
talking about, like, and if you're talking about it in a corporate sense,
mm,
for example, then you're like, how we define ourselves by our job title, and that kind of thing. And it's like, no, that's not what you are. This corporation that runs things, and we're in subdivisions of that corporation, cannot be natural. It's a non-living, it's a dead entity. A corporation is literally the dead.
mm,
And so anything that's attributed to that is surely a little bit like putting the rubber on your feet and expecting to be grounded.
mm,
Is really an insulator against the natural order of things. So it offers all sorts of insurances and protections and ego, stuff and all of that. But I can't see that we were meant to be defined as as well, a bank manager or a
mm,
whatever, and then you get this 10, 20 year golf sort of retirement at the end of it. I just don't see, and I don't knock anyone for taking that journey, by the way.
mm,
Most everybody I know, most people I know, that's the way that we define ourselves in this
mm.
place. But but that's because we believe we are these material beings and we are not, an emanation of something much more
mm,
uh, divine. And it's like saying to you, well, you have this entire body, but because you were born here on the hand, then the only place you can ever explore is your hand. You can't
mm,
really go anywhere else. Don't go to the leg or the head or
mm,
anything like that. You're really meant to stay in the hand. And if this earth, whatever it's made of or however it's made up, is the body of all that is, it's the body of God, if you like,
mm,
then it seems to me to be a natural um, journey to explore the body
mm,
and micro macro. And we live in a world that doesn't really like us to do that too much, or tries to confuse us about all of those sorts of things.
mm.
And why, if it's not with the intention to rob you of that. Sorry to use the pun there, but rob you of
Mm,
your higher self's intent.
mm.
Um,
I
so
know that there's kind of, I'm not sure how much of like kind of meditation that you've experienced, but a lot of kind of like um
a bit.
Buddhist meditation is like you kind of put yourself into a state where the thoughts just arise,
Mm,
and it is kind of how much of the thoughts, how much of your thoughts are really you, and where do they come from? It's almost like um yeah, I say I've got to that place a few times where kind of these, you're kind of like got nothing really in your mind, but then suddenly kind of a thought appears, and it's almost like it's from
yeah,
nowhere, and
yeah,
it's kind of, it's hard to say that, I willed that thought into existence. It was out
mm,
of my own kind of free
mm,
will that I thought this. It
mm,
very much experientially feels like these kind of thoughts just appear, and
yeah,
there's nothing really, like, you're not really in control of your own
yeah,
thoughts, which is like kind of another thing. It's like thinking about kind of free will and determinism, like, where do those kind of thoughts come
mm,
from, if you do have your free will? Like, why
mm,
can't I why don't I experience the fact that I can think things? I don't know. It's kind of it's just another thing that's been kind of on my mind recently. Like,
good. On your mind, yeah. Where did that come from? But and as you said earlier, like the firing of neurons and it goes blue and red and what have you. And
mm,
now scientists say, well, that's how he must be coming up with that idea, kind of thing. Well, I've definitely experienced that doing street activism, where I get into, or where I'm say doing public speaking, when I get just into a particular zone, clarity,
mm,
and then I'm not thinking anymore. The stuff is just coming to
yeah,
me from somewhere, and
stream of
it's
consciousness.
great. I can feel it
Yeah.
in my neck. I can feel it like, wow, this is,
Mm,
so I'm really having to give that time. And in a way, it's like when you pay attention to it, it's like it goes away. So
yeah. Yeah.
it's a bit like, some of the quantum stuff, when you notice it, then it changes it,
Mm,
right? So the trick is to, and that's, I guess, where the monks and so on and the meditators, and I have done some meditation in my lifetime, but where the practice will come where you don't then apply thought to that. You don't then go, oh shit, yeah, look, that's happening for me. Because the moment you do that, you're
yeah, it
you're
goes.
out of the zone. Yeah. Um, and so that's where the difference between someone who's living a programmed existence where the alarm rings at 5 o'clock, then this happens, then they do this for 5 days of the week, and then for 2 days of the week they go off to the supermarket in the morning, and then they do this on the Sunday, and then you've taken away that kind of, you're overriding with a new program, a stronger
Mm,
program. Um, this is what happens now, and I don't think for myself anymore. It's already been mapped out for me, pretty much.
mm,
I might have to dodge around an old lady on the
mm,
road, whatever. But I'm going to pretty much have all of that um, uh, intuition, or that incoming kind of meditative mind, where I'm getting my download or my insight or my sense
Mm.
of what I want to write, if I'm writing or if I'm the artist or if I'm creating or trying to, and particularly for the last years where I genuinely wanted to have time to reconsider what the universe might be and our place in it. I know that I can only do that really efficiently when I'm in a place of stillness and zen,
Mm.
and then my mind can kind of open. Whereas for the rest of the time, if you're in that sort of fight or flight or fear or con condensation or um, constriction,
Mm.
then you are insulated like the rubber soles. You are insulated from your higher self. You are unable to reach your higher self. And I think sometimes a lot of that higher self is talking to us through the gut. Um,
Mm.
it's not just in the head. That actually, the scientists tell us that there's about 80% of your brain nerve pathway runs through from the gut to the brain or
Mm.
something. That the gut is a very important bellwether. And that if we feel it right in our gut, so if we're in touch with ourselves,
Mm.
we're in touch with our Zen self, I suppose, then we are going to um, be operating on what do I feel like doing today?
Mm.
How am I going to approach this mountain, or I'm going to
Mm.
take on this challenge?
I think there's a lot of kind of I think kind of like the yin yang symbol has it right, kind of like the order chaos type thing of like you need to kind of function, you need to be embedded into like a structure.
Hmm.
Like you can't just be swimming in chaos because there's but it's kind of like you need the structure, but you need kind of like that chaotic element kind of on the boundary. Like that's kind of where all the meaning lies.
Mm.
That's kind of where you feel most alive, is kind of when you're doing something that's, you're just pushing the edge of what
Yeah.
you'll know. Like of what you know, you're kind of like on that boundary between
Mm.
order and chaos.
Mm.
So you don't
Mm.
want to be too much in order, because that's like totalitarian rule. That's like there's no creativity, there's no freedom. You don't feel alive. But equally, you can't be kind of swimming in the chaos, like the nihilistic
Love it.
chaos where nothing means anything. There's no structure.
Okay.
Um,
Well,
so
this
I
is
think
a
they kind of got
yeah.
something right by saying it's kind of the balance
Yes,
between those two forces is kind
correct.
of.
Correct. Well, and so this is probably a good way to close out this conversation
Mm.
today, is to bring what you just said back to what I was saying about the good shepherd.
Mm.
So the good shepherd has to take care of the sheep and the goats. Now, in yourself, each of us, we have the sheep and the goats. The sheep are um, generally in this context are is the head.
Mm.
The head is the follower. The head is where, all the spiritual kind of religion, and the sheep are really good at staying still and being calm, but they will also, in fear, they will flock and they will
Mm.
run easily. However, the goats, which is connected, the word goat is connected to egoat. The goats represent your lower self, your
Mm.
naughtier energies, your more excitable energy, which is your goat. So the when people think in the Bible verse of Jesus talking about managing the sheep and the goats, really it's your own sheep and your own goats that need
Mm.
to come into harmony. And the harmony or the balance place between the sheep and the goats is the heart,
Yeah.
in your body.
Mm.
And I often do this to people. I put out my arms and say, "This is the Christian cross." If I'm standing with my feet together and my
Mm.
arms outstretched, I am representing the Christian cross. And right at the center of that, you've got a left wing and a right wing, and you've got the sheep upstairs and you've got the
Mm.
goats down below. But right in the center is the heart. And so this is where I think that we're meant to be in ourselves, is that we're not, which is why I don't sponsor Puritanism. I don't think that we should be these super pure beings, but
Mm.
equally we should not be these rambunctious goats that are just running around causing mayhem.
Mm.
And nor should we be too left wing or too right wing in the way that we approach things. If a bird is flying too left wing, it's going to go around in circles.
Mm.
And so And so I think that this is where I can bring it all back to our own journey. And our own journey is one of coming into neutrality, into balance, into the center, into heart, which is love, which is the earth, balance. Um, and but the thing is that it's correct that you allow the sheep to express themselves and you allow the goats to express themselves
Mm,
in their own way and you feel your left wing and you feel your right wing so that
mm,
you have tested all of these elements of yourselves. Like I say to people, if I was to uh, deny my children access to certain things because I said, oh, no, 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 age appropriate, but, no, you can never see that thing. You can
yeah.
never touch alcohol. You can never,
Mm,
it's like, no, that's for their goat, them
yeah.
to work out their own balance
Yeah.
but they have to have climbed the mountain and gone down into the depths, plumbed the depths of the goat
Mm,
land, the dark, the red, the magma, the hell, as some people say, perhaps. But I mean, also being too much in the sheep, too much in the heavens, too much in the head, is
yeah.
also a form of hell. Again, so it's a neutrality or a balance point that I
Mm,
think that we're trying to strike here in our own growth. And then, of course, if you're the good farmer and the good shepherd, then perhaps those around you and those others will also be so inspired and will there will be good shepherding. If everybody in the town is running around like wild men and stuff, then
mm,
that's what the boys are going to come through like, wild men and so on.
mm.
So that's a really a good way to conclude today's
Yeah,
conversation.
that was excellent.
Um, I think we'll have to do it again and when the time is right, if you're
For sure. For
free in a
sure.
week or two.
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting ideas. Thank you very much.
Cool. Thanks very much, Rob. Appreciate it. I'll end the stream. Um, I'll stop the recording. I think that's what I meant to do. Um, Stop recording. Where's that? Here.